Hello, my name is Wang Yi, but you probably know me best as Emperor Kangxi of the Qing Dynasty. Not to toot my own horn here, but I am usually known as the greatest emperor China has ever had. I ruled over China for 61 years, which, is longer than any emperor ever. I stopped the taxation of the poor and the needy, I took better care of our elders, ended war with most of our enemies. Well, before all that, I was just the third son of Emperor Sean Deringer. And that's me. But I didn't really know much about my father. From a very young age, he contracted a disease called smallpox. And when I was around 8 years old, he passed away. So with no one to take the throne, it went to me, but you may think, well, why me and not any of my brothers? Well, to be honest, it was kind of a technicality. You see, when I was younger, I had survived smallpox. So while my dad lay there dying sick in his room, the only one who could be brought in for his benediction was me. So really, it was just kind of some sort of dumb luck. The imperviation that I had. But initially, it kind of backfired on China. They thought an 8-year-old wasn't ready to run the kingdom, and who could blame him, really? So, 4 regents, named Sonin, Ebluin, Sukasta, and finally, oh boy, ruled the kingdom in my place. Specifically, the man named Oh Boy took on most of the duties that I'd normally be doing. Initially, I thought this would be a good way to get exposed to how ruling a kingdom would work. Exposing myself to the full responsibility at such a young age seemed like the only way to become the great emperor that I would come on to be. Well, I was right, just for all the wrong reasons. A boy became crazy with power. He used to be this crazy military general, and when presented with power, he tried to become this crazy dictator type of guy. He wanted all the power in the kingdom. He even had some of the other regents that were supposed to be helping also run the kingdom in my father's place. He had them sentenced to death. And whenever I tried to speak to him about it, he would always say that I wasn't ready for the throne, or that I was a little kid and I should just go away. But once I turned 14, I had enough of this nonsense that he was trying to push onto the kingdom. He filled all the political offices with his friends. He even had the audacity to make his own golden dragon robes made, something that was only worn by the emperor. Disgrace. When I was about 14 years old, I was told that I now had actually become the full-fledged emperor of China. And my first task was to take out and arrest Oh Boy. It was time for the plan that I had to think of years to come into fruition. I created a young group of Manchus that had been trained to be strong and vicious. They trained through sports that we played like wrestling. We approached him in the castle and told him all the reasons for his arrest. And then, just like that, a fierce battle commenced in between the wrestlers and Emperor Oh Boy. My men tried to take him down, but they were pretty successful, but Oh Boy struck out with a knife and he went straight for me. But my men were going all sorts of psycho on him, picking him up, throwing him around, and eventually they had hurled him all the way into a jail cell where the corrupt lunatic spent the rest of his days. And just like that, I had become the full-fledged emperor I was chosen to become. And honestly, I think his corruption and me taking over the kingdom at such a young age is what led me to having such a long and successful reign. The people were so dissatisfied with the rule that they were happy to accept me as their leader, despite how young I was. Living under corruption and power changes people, and the cruelty I saw to the people of China face, while I was worthless and powerless to do anything. It really put me in the place of the people. It helped me relate to them more honestly, and without seeing the ways power can corrupt the man like Oh Boy, I don't know if I would have been pervious to the same kind of corruption. With all that in mind, it was finally time to start my reign of 61 years. Upon taking the throne, there were 3 issues that I thought I should attack by the end of my reign. Number 1, stop the excess flooding of the Yellow River. Number 2, disassemble many wars that we were having and take back our territory. And 3, the building of the Grand Canal. The first one I attacked was the one I thought the most important, which would be wars, starting with the Great Feudatories of China. The Great Feudatories of China were 3 groups of rebels that lived near the southern coast of China. They were loyalists to the dynasty that preceded me, the Ming, and refused to be part of our empire. Specifically, a man of the name Wu Sangui was gathering up troops in the southern part of China and rallying and forming alliances with the other generals down there. I knew this had to be stopped somehow, so I convinced the court to square up the troops and to squash these fools. The 3 emperors had 2 different responses to that kind of gearing up for war. 2 of them were actually quite compliant, and they politely and gave up their kingdoms to me, out of respect in hopes of being spared, but Wu, he didn't give up so easy, and that's why I jumped straight onto my horse and drove straight into the battle with these stupid rebels to squander them with the military training that I had. Oh, I don't get to fight. Yes, as badly as I want to lead an army as the head general into the battle, the court officials advised that it'd be best if I stayed back. So, this time, at least, I didn't get to go into battle. But instead, I sent my 2 best generals, Zhao Paigong and Tu Hai. And they led us into battle, and it didn't even seem fair. Within about 2 months' time, the rebellion had been completely squashed. All the battles had been finished, and I offered monetary compensation to those innocent civilians that were caught in the crossfire of the wars between the rebels and my militia. I even offered monetary compensation to those who moved into the southern coast where the rebels had once lived. And just like that, there was peace, and the war around China was ceased, except for the Russians and the Mongols, that is. So let's start with the Russians, because they happened first, and they're much easier foes. Basically, they came in from the north, they fought us, we won. They invade us again, we fought them, we won. Then the leader of Russia was like, hey, maybe we should stop doing this. And we're like, well, here's the Treaty of Narrated, and we get the armor value and the territory around it, what they had been seeking this whole time. And Russia and China were once again chill. Now, the Mongols, they didn't go nearly down as easily. To make a long, and I do mean long, story short, the Dunzer Mongols occupied Mongolia, but I wanted outer Mongolia under my control. So this time I actually did get onto my steed and lead my troops through Mongolia. After crossing the horror that was the Gobi Desert, the Mongolians began to flee to the inner parts of Mongolia, and I was satisfied with that, took the outer Mongolia that was rightfully mine. I was cool with that, and I guess so were the Mongolians, and until 20 years where they tried to do the same thing again, but then I just took it right back. Sorry, Mongols. The last big issue that had been my goal to conquer since the beginning of my rule was the annual flooding of the Yellow River. This flooding of the river is very unstable. It can oftentimes ruin several villages within China. I put my good pal Jin Fu up to the case. He ensured that the waterways became stabilized by hollowing it out and allowing the water to flow more freely and smoothly. And then, once again, the villages of China were safe. After that, I tried to balance the waterways between the Huanghe River and the lower Yangtze River. I did this through a little canal that became known as the Grand Canal. And if I'm going to be honest here, the irrigation system that was put into place was pretty advanced for its time. This canal allowed for better control of where the water was being flowed to, which allowed for better watering of the rice in China, which allowed for the economy to flourish. And just like that, all the goals I initially set out to conquer had all been conquered. So, I mean, all that stuff sounds great. Increasing the rule of China, fixing its waterways, overthrowing a corrupt ruler, but is it best emperor worthy? Well, here's a quick list of the other reasons that the people love me. Despite fighting on the higher ends of wars and battles in Chinese history, taxes were never raised. In fact, they were oftentimes lowered and at an all-time low during my rule. In the latter half of my rule, taxes were eliminated completely to the lower and middle class. Due to my upbringing by well and educated Jesuits, I began to adopt Western beliefs into society, such as incorporating Christianity. Direct quote from me here: it's really unbearable to not look after the old as we grow ill. I continued to support Neo-Confucian ideas. I did all the paperwork for laws and money and the such by myself, in hand, in order to avoid any sort of interference by corrupt court officials. Like I said, I personally fought against the Mongols upon declaring war between them. I finished the conquest of the area for most of the time would be known as China, and the economy was at an all-time high between the Ming and the Qing Dynasty. I know it sounds a little braggy when I say all this, but how can I not? While other emperors wasted money on themselves or only cared about their family and the other rich, I overthrew a corrupt leader and started one of the most blossoming time periods in Chinese history. And I'd think it's pretty hard to argue with logic like that I am not the best.